Hey, Lacrosse friends, welcome once again to Lacrosse Link. I am Steven Stamp, your host. Very pleased to be bringing you some of the finest coverage of the sport on the internet and on Lax Sports Network. Glad you can be with us. Pretty interesting interviews this week as we go far and wide. We are going to Germany to speak with Simon Krause, who is the organizer for both the German Lax Convention, which is going to be a European-wide gathering of everybody in the sport next May, and also the European Box Lacrosse Championship, which is to be held next July, August in Hanover, Germany. The Lax Convention is in Dresden. So lots of cool stuff happening in Germany. The game is exploding across the pond over on the European continent, and it's pretty cool to see that. We also have Nick Coyne, who is from Dallas, Texas. Not Texas, is it? Texas. He is the equipment manager now for Panther City Lacrosse Club. He was hoping to be a player in the NLL at one point. Now he's got a very cool front row view of all that is going on. And Nick is an old friend of mine and is a very cool guy. Really need to catch up with him in the Toronto airport. We appreciate him jumping on. So thank you so much for being with us. Enjoy the show. Stick around for the rundown at the end. This is Lacrosse Link, your link for all things lacrosse.
Beautiful play, Aaron Greyeyes. He is having himself a tournament. He made the save regardless of the crease call, and that shows he is at his acrobatic. In the middle, it just bounces off, but it's picked up and scored.
And it's a ticket talking Mazda for the biggest. That's a comma and a comma and a comma. Gotta get it.
Very cool to have our first guest from Germany, not our last, I'm sure, on Lacrosse Link. Simon Krause, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So we've got a couple of things to talk about. The first one is the German Lax Convention, which my understanding is it's modeled on LaxCon that is held in the U.S. in Philly or Baltimore or whatever, and it's a pretty ambitious project. Just tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me. The LaxCon is, like you mentioned, a little bit modeled after the US version, but we want to embrace a little bit more the actual character of Coyne. So besides having a convention where we'll have manufacturers from Europe, but also from North America, we'll also have the Nation Cups, which are small 4-team tournaments for box lacrosse for men's and sixes, well, lacrosse sixes for men's and women's. We'll have national teams invited. And so we kind of combine the aspect of having a convention together with attractive games. And the basic concept is to increase visibility of lacrosse within Europe and build new bridges to other partners, and especially link or bring Europe closer towards North America.
And things have really been growing. I've had the good fortune to get over to Europe a handful of times for European Championships in Finland 4 years ago now, for the Alice Robeski, for the E-Box, and it's just so cool to see kind of the overall growth, like the European lacrosse growing as a whole, and also within each individual nation there are massive changes from period to period in some of the games or some of the tournaments, but obviously year to year there's growth. There's always setbacks as well, just because not everyone can keep going all the time. But I'm curious what the kind of overarching goal is for your Lax Convention. Like you said, trying to drive everything, really help build things. What are you hoping that people take away from it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for people from North America that have never entered the European hemisphere of lacrosse, you can kind of think of it like a lacrosse in the US, where you have lacrosse in different states. So in Europe, it's very similar that you have a lot of different countries, but there have some cultural differences, but overall, everyone is playing the sport and loves it. It's not so commercialized yet, and this is one of the aspects that we want to change, obviously, to stimulate growth, both on the grassroots level, but also on the more professional side of things. We need some sponsors and more interest on the market, bring in some funds, really build new platforms, provide lacrosse streaming on a European basis, make it more visible so new people can enter our sport. And this is one of the central aspects. We kind of defined these two hashtags, get visible and get active, in a sense that we want to show the sport on its full width, but also have everyone involved. All the European nations are welcome to participate. And one of the key aspects of how we want to realize this event is a big crowdfunding campaign. So we really want to show upfront that the people in Europe and abroad are interested in that kind of event. And we are critical to raise the funds. And the fundraising has been running for a week now, and we've already raised 20% of the 40,000 euros that we need. So we are pretty hopeful that we'll be able to get the funds and then have the German Lacrosse Convention take place in Dresden, May 20 to 22nd next year.
And we'll put the links to the fundraising campaign on the screen while we're talking about this. So, anyone who can contribute, obviously it would be great. If you have an interest in European lacrosse, if you've been to a tournament, if you have friends who have played or want to play, or if you want to play, I would encourage anyone who can to contribute to the convention, because I think it's going to be such a cool thing. Like you said, Dresden, May 20th to 22nd.
That's correct.
Yeah, the tournaments with the sixes for the men and women, the box for the four men's teams, and just a lot of things going on, which is going to be a big step forward for lacrosse on the European continent. And speaking of steps forward, the second ever European Box Lacrosse Championship scheduled for next year, postponed from this year, like so many things have been, in Hanover next July, end of July and beginning of August. What is going on with the European Box Championships in Germany?
Yeah, 2022 is going to be a pretty packed year for us lacrosse-wise, and we want to make the fullest of it. So the initial bid, like you mentioned, would have been a couple of months ago in August, but pandemic-wise has been shifted to 2022. We have 16 teams, the top European teams lined up. I think everyone is already starting preparing their rosters. Germany just released their preliminary training roster, and so do some other nations. And I mean, the competition looks pretty good. I think what is pretty unique about the European Box Lacrosse Championships is that it's really European-based teams. So there's not so much North American influence on the rosters that you might have in other Field Lacrosse World Championships. And there are some new interesting nations that really have used the time off to prepare the programs and players. For example, France, Belgium, Netherlands, always very competitive, but also Finland, Sweden. We have the Czech Republic, obviously, and Israel as the defending champion. It's going to be a pretty full 8 days. And obviously, we also hope to have you over there to call some games and really expose the sport more to North America.
Yeah, I'm really hoping we can work that out. I was at the first Euros in Turku, Finland, in 2017. And it was an amazing event. Honestly, the final between Israel and the Czech Republic was one of my favorite lacrosse games I've called. It was a terrific game.
It was amazing. It was amazing. I mean,
right?
I was sitting on the stands. I think the most memorable moment was when the whole arena, and to put that in perspective, they had a huge arena. It's like a 35,000 seat capacity. It almost looked empty, but there were over 4,000 people in there. And Pavel Doshly, the European box lacrosse legend, captain of the Czech team, scored one of the equalizers, I think either almost tied it up or tied up the game, and it was an amazing atmosphere. And obviously, we hope to generate such an atmosphere as well.
Yeah, it'd be great. And I mean, you mentioned France and Belgium are both new to the Euros, both joining international box lacrosse for the first time. A bunch of nations back. What are the other new countries? You have them at the tip of your tongue?
I think France and Belgium are the new ones. We also are getting more increasing interest from Southern Europe, like Italy. There are some Spanish teams that now start playing box lacrosse, but we really want to make it a competitive championships. So there will be some aspects for new teams to develop, and the box lacrosse in Europe is growing. In particular, the Czech Republic is providing a lot of platforms, like the Aleš Šebrecký Memorial. But the weekend before, you have the e-box, which is like a national team kind of tournament without a cup, just scrimmages, and that is very helpful. And one thing that we are currently doing, and I hope other nations will do as well, try to link up also with the European ice hockey scene, because we have the venues together, and try to make lacrosse, like in Canada, a traditional summer sport for ice hockey fans. And I think the EBLC can be an event that can really kickstart this kind of aspects.
Yeah, it's so cool. Honestly, the other great thing about the Europeans that I found was, I mean, World Championships is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. Watching Canada and the Iroquois play is amazing. But the Euros tend to be more evenly competitive, more broadly competitive throughout the tournament. There are some gaps, but you don't have a Canada who's going to beat teams by, tons and tons of goals the way it can happen in the Worlds if they're, when they're mixing groups or whatever. I think that there's a bit more level playing field, and it's a lot of fun, and you do see a lot of growth, a lot of progress. I know England and Scotland have both had training camps in the last few weeks, and there's so much else happening, and we're running out of time, so I've got to go, but I do want to mention women's lacrosse taking off, a world championship to be in 2024. I feel like that's another huge stepping stone that Europe's going to be hitting soon, and we'll have to talk about that. We're going to have you back on LaxSpeak podcast in a little while to talk in greater depth about a number of issues, so we'll get into some of that then. But Simon Krause, thank you so much for coming on Lacrosse Link, and everyone, if you can, make a donation and help out. Really strongly encourage you to do so. And Simon, thanks, and we'll look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you very much. We'll have women's box lacrosse at the convention as well.
Yay! Okay. Excellent news. That was quick and very good news.
Hi, this is Jaden with Al Anderson Source for Sports. Excited to tell you that we got all our new lacrosse product in for this upcoming season. Whether you're playing box or field, our lacrosse experts are going to make sure we get you into the right equipment to elevate your game. At Al Anderson Source for Sports, we know our stuff.
Welcome to the show, old friend, and great to catch up with Nick Coyne. Really glad to have you here on Lacrosse Link.
Thanks, Stamper. Glad to be here.
So you are in the Toronto airport. We really appreciate you after battling the security and customs lines, finding a spot where we can do this because you've had a very interesting weekend. You are the equipment manager for Panther City Lacrosse Club, but your involvement with the team goes way back, way before the team even existed, really. Because I know you've been involved in as such a key community member of the box lacrosse community in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. How did this whole thing come about? Because I know you were looking at one point, hoping to play in the National Lacrosse League. You're a very close second option, right?
I would like to think so. Maybe the coaches, not so much, but yeah, no. It's been pretty exciting to, like you said, this has been a long time coming to just get the team here, It was interesting when Bob came down and kind of got a hold of us. This is one of the things he asked, and it was something that I was always on board with from the second he asked. It's very exciting. So yeah.
I mean, I was a little surprised to see when you announced you're going to be the equipment manager, but then I thought about, you brought me down to Dallas to do the play-by-play for streaming for the Dallas Box Lacrosse League tournament a few summers ago. And you were organizing everything. You were handling all the gear. You and Travis Tunstall were handling, it seemed like everything around the arena for all the teams. It makes a lot of sense when I think of that, of how you tend to wind up in organizational roles. What's your job specifically like, and how does it compare to the stuff you've been doing for the DBLL?
Well, my job specifically is equipment manager. So I guess anything and everything equipment wise, anything that goes with the team, jerseys, shirts, although I do have some help. We have a team ops lady named Amanda, and she actually was with the other WNBA team, the Wings. And so she's kind of been helping out with a lot of organizational things, just a lot of things with the players and stuff and whatnot. So I just deal with a lot of the equipment, and really, I guess the one thing, it's not just specific equipment. It's relating to just players. It's gear. It's heads. It's shafts. It's socks. It's this. It's that. So it translates from the league and what we were doing there in terms of ordering jerseys. Designing jerseys. Fixing gear. Acquiring gear. Yada yada. So. That was, maybe you could say, a smaller scale. This is, a lot higher. This is the pros, right? This is the league, So, that's basically what I do, is just, order all the equipment, make sure we have enough, make sure we have some extras, shafts and whatnot. So,
I would say
it's all a learning curve.
As an equipment guy on Ted Cordingley, with the Bandits, he is the king.
Oh, it's funny you say that, because he was actually the one guy I reached out to kind of before when I had my interviews with TK and Bob. That was actually the first guy I reached out to, just because you know he's on social media and whatnot, so you'll see him around if you're part of the community. But I know his importance to the Canadian lacrosse community in terms of his knowledge and expertise with that. So yeah, I've been getting with him. We'll have, me and him will text in the middle of the night and whatnot, just about random stuff. So he's been a great help for sure.
And you had some other responsibilities this weekend. I understand you're in at the Brampton Memorial for training camp with Panther City. How'd that go? And what did you wind up getting up to during some of the practices and things beyond the equipment role?
First of all, walking into Brampton after seeing, games streamed online, being from the States, it's cool to kind of come into these places and of his history. This weekend, we just had a practice and we had a scrimmage at the ILA, but I guess, in terms with this, the team being new and whatnot, we didn't send a social guy with us to take photographer or whatever photos and whatnot. So with my background in that, I kind of, got stuck doing that. So I'm kind of like a Swiss Army knife, if you will, just fixing gear, ordering gear, making sure the guys are good, coach is good. And, at least for now, capturing photos when we can't send a, social guy with us.
You mentioned you weren't prepared for how cold the arena was going to be, which is hilarious to anybody who's been at games during the summer at Brampton Memorial, because it is such a sweat box in the summer that it's renowned for players sometimes having trouble getting through games. It gets so hot. So it was probably a relief for some of them to have a nice cool rink.
Yeah, well, no, that was the funny thing, was in the morning we were there at like 9 a.m. So, it's, of course, I'm going to talk American here. It was like 36 degrees Fahrenheit. So, we get into the arena and I'm immediately blown away because I could still see my breath. It didn't change any from going outside to inside. And, so the guy was like, we turned the heat on, this and that. So they really couldn't tell the difference. But yeah, that's what the feedback was. It's either too cold in there or too hot. So.
And for you getting to a scrimmage at the ILA, it reminds me immediately when you mentioned that of your trip up from Texas, where you and Travis drove up 25 hours, I believe you said it was, to get to the Trobak Athletic Center to be there for the National Lacrosse League Combine. You're there for the draft, and you did manage en route to get a chance to go to the ILA and just remember that experience for us quickly.
Yeah, no, that's kind of what I tell people, right, is that everyone's surprised, one, that I'm from Fort Worth or Dallas and that I'm a part of the lacrosse team, that I know about lacrosse or I even know what to do with the equipment. But it's another thing when these guys, like you've been here before. The funny thing is 2016, the combine that we played in, Dean Farrell, who's now on the team trying out for a spot, we were together at the combine, so we've kind of been buddies since then. But he stepping into the arena for the first time this week, and he's like, I've never been here. He's a Western boy, so being able to just at least be able to get there once before that and know what it was about, and the second time was just it's always a special moment to walk into that building. I love it. The orange just saturates you. But that first time we came up, 26 hours we were coming up for the combine, and I remember we drove 24 hours straight, right, me and Travis, and we were crazy. I don't know what we were thinking, a bunch of lunatics. And I remember that we were getting in, and I mean, hey, we're lacrosse players, so I mean, what better way to go to the combine and shake off the dust and get into a game or throw around or shoot around. So yeah, I reached out to Chris Bale, who actually works at the ILA, runs the shop there, and he told us that he's got a pickup game coming, and we were more than welcome to come out there. And so that in its own stuff was kind of my first taste of playing with the guys above the border, if you will. And what better to start it, than playing with the natives at the ILA. That was a real treat. It was hilarious, walking into the room, it was like, who the hell are you? Like, I'm from Texas, and they're like, you got to be kidding me, from Texas. Like, yeah, so
you came up just for this game?
Oh no, I go for some pickup, $10. Here you go. I'm gonna turn around and go back after this. But Yeah, no. So it's been since 2016. It's been a long time. Since then, I wouldn't have thought back then I would be in this position now. So it's awesome.
Well, we're out of time. It goes so quick. I know you have to go hop on a flight pretty soon. Anyways, really appreciate you taking the time. Our first airport interview, I believe, and great to catch up. Great to hear about everything that's going on with you and Panther City, and I look forward to running into you in a rink sooner rather than later.
Sanford, can't wait to see you again. This whole COVID stuff had us all take a hiatus from each other, huh?
My goodness. We'll see you soon. Thanks, Nick.
All right, see you, Sanford.
Okay, thanks for being with us here on Lacrosse Link. A couple of great interviews, some really interesting stuff. Of course, the European expansion of the game, I think, is really critical to its future and pretty exciting stuff. Closer to home, though, not too close to my home in Buckhorn, but in North Bay, about 3 hours and a bit north of the area, north of the Toronto area. Nipissing University played host to the Bigataway Cup 2021. Terrific tournament. It was the final 6 teams in Kufla competing for a championship, and the Brock Badgers win the Bigataway for the first time in 12 years. And that is really weird because they have won, going into the weekend, they had won 18 of the 35 Bigataway Cup championships that had been contested. And when you think about, take the last 12 years out of that, they won 18 in 23 or 24 years. Unbelievable run of success and dominance. In the final, they wound up playing a Guelph Griffins team that have won 5 Bigataway Cups, and they haven't won any. So Brock, it had been 2012 the last time they won. Guelph's last victory, 2014, their second of back-to-back wins. And that team had a lot of very well-known players, guys that you'll see in the NLL to this day, like Curtis Knight, a bunch of other players. So a very good history between these teams. And they had played in multiple championship games before, Brock winning most of them. So it comes down to a great final game, and Brock gets ahead 7-4 after a few quarters. Guelph starts to chip away. They get back. They actually go up 8-7. Brock ties it up. Guelph goes up 9-8. Brock ties it up. And we go to overtime. And so many storylines. I'm going to have to get some more into this. Maybe we'll talk some more on LaxSpeed about it, because Jeff Wittig was playing long pole. He's a forward in box lacrosse. He's an NLL forward, played for the Colorado Mammoth. Most recently, he was playing long pole. He's an all-Canadian long pole for the Brock Badgers, and he was an all-Bigataway Cup tournament long pole. He went up and played up on the attack lines with his long pole at times. He also, when one of his teammates got hurt, he went in with the short stick and scored the tying goal to force overtime. And then Aiden Bowie comes through with his third of the game. Fascinating, the vagaries of lacrosse. Aiden Bowie scored 1 assist in Brock's opening quarterfinal game against the Queen's Gales. In the semifinal, they played the Bishop's Gators. He had no points whatsoever. And then in the championship game, he gets a hat trick, including the overtime winner a little under a minute into the extra frame, as it was sudden victory overtime. So very exciting weekend up in North Bay. I had the play-by-play call with Ryan McMichael. Got some more Uncle Frick news coming in the near future here on Lacrosse Link, and I think it's going to be pretty fun, pretty exciting stuff for all of us here. So we just a little tease on that. We'll get more into it in the near future. On the other side, Guelph Really interesting stuff. First, Mitch Ogilvie was sensational. He's a midfielder. He played all over the field. There were a lot of great players at the tournament, but he just shone. And the other player who really shone for Guelph was Nolan Schott, long pole defender, and he had a breakout tournament. He'd been a good defender, but he really exploded onto the scene. Had maybe the best Piscataway Cup tournament I've ever seen a player have in the 11 or 12 years that I've been covering the tournament. And he was sensational at both ends of the field. He would go up. He scored a couple of goals. He was transitioning. He was some hits. He was playing great defense, amazing stick. He was just fantastic. An absolute Dyson we talked about on loose balls, ground balls. He and Ogilvie, if there's a ball on the ground, one of those two were getting it for Guelph. It was pretty spectacular. And the cool thing, 5 years ago, Nolan's older brother, Ethan Schott, had a breakout Piscataway Cup for the Trent Excalibur. He is now working at being in the NLL. He's played for a couple of teams and trying to make a team right now in camp. So pretty cool family stories, pretty great lacrosse, a lot of fun at the Piscataway Cup. Quickly, the National Lacrosse League, all teams have now had their training camps, so the season is getting here quicker and quicker. December 3rd, it starts. Before you know it, we'll be underway. There are team previews going up on IL Indoor for every team. They have started running, so go and check those out. Lots of info there for you to check out, see all the comings and goings for players on the different teams. And, of course, come back to Lacrosse Link, and LaxCon will have tons of NLL coverage, obviously, throughout the season. Speaking of the NLL, fairly breaking news as we're recording. It's going to be well known by the time the show comes out. But Rhys Dutch, there's been talk about where is Rhys Dutch going to sign. He is an all-time great future Hall of Famer, virtually for sure. He's a lock. Whether he goes in his first year is probably the biggest question. He has signed with the Halifax Thunderbirds, and that's very interesting because of all the teams that you would think may not have room for a righty forward of Rhys Dutch's caliber, it's Halifax because they already have Clark Peterson, Austin Shanks, Chris Boucher, Stephen Keogh, and Mike Burke on that right side. A lot of depth already. Very interesting to see how that position battle plays out in Halifax for the purple and orange. Lacrosse is returning to the Canada Games next year. It was supposed to be in summer of 2021, but the Canada Games postponed, as so many things have been. And they will now be happening next summer in St. Catharines, in the early August period. We'll check the exact dates and get back to that for you. But yeah, happening next August, Canada Games, lacrosse is returning. The last time lacrosse was in the Canada Games, way back in 1985. And I was actually fortunate enough to be rowing for Ontario at those Canada Games. Won a gold medal in the men's 8, won a bronze medal in the men's 4. Still a little bitter about that one. Should have had the gold. Very close race. Anyway, I got to go, the athletes got to go to other sports when you had time. So I went to some lacrosse games, and I'm going to have to get Joe Hiltz on, the OSL commissioner, Ontario Series Lacrosse commissioner, to talk about those games. He and a whole bunch of guys from Peterborough were on that Ontario team. And as he likes to say, they were playing one team and they were winning their games by a lot. So they were trying to be respectful, pass the ball around a lot. And then one team, I can't remember who it was, scored a goal on Ontario and celebrated like they just won an enormous event. And Ontario decided, okay, floodgates open, and they poured in. I don't even know how many goals it was. We'll get Joe to remind you, but the lopsidedness apparently of that tournament was the death knell for lacrosse in the Canada Games back in 1985. Pretty exciting that it is returning. Lots going on. We'll have plenty more on Lacrosse Link every week. Some cool stuff. We've got news of a box going up in Australia. We've got some Courier brothers coming on the show. We've got one of our very own at Lacrosse Link, Chris Lesanko, really cool story about him coming up in the next weeks on Lacrosse Link. So make sure you subscribe, share with your friends, come back every week, check out Lacrosse Link, your link to all things lacrosse.